Hey, what's going on guys, Khraze here, welcome back to Outriders once more, and today I want to talk about a very interesting topic, which is going to be how some of the changes that I've applied to my character's build have completely unstuck me from the challenge tier log that I was into for the longest time, pretty much for the majority of the past week. And there's currently a big misconception running around in the fan base that anybody who's covering the game on YouTube or on Twitch or who's streaming the game is already on World Tier 15 and rolling in a ton of best in slot legendaries, which is not the case. There's many of us, including myself, who have taken their time with the game, which also meant that many of us, actually the majority of the player base, did not take advantage of the tricks and the more powerful builds before the rebalancing to get to the maximum world tier, which means you are more affected because this means your build is not yet finalized. You don't even have the best in slot, maybe mods or maybe stats or maybe items. So chances are that if you're in that situation, you're probably stuck somewhere between challenge tier 9 and challenge tier 12, with the most of you probably being around challenge tier 11 and stuck in there, which is what was also the case for me up until last night when I did a bunch of these changes, and I didn't just like easily get over that, but I'm now pushing on to challenge tier 14, and hopefully by the end of the weekend I get into 15. So here are some of the things that I've done, and I'm also going to show you along the way my build, since this has been a question for me. One of the major changes with the class build was the fact that I completely removed the Sign of Power, since now I came up with a build that constantly uses the twisted rounds, so it never falls off, which means that Sign of Power is kinda useless for me. Everything else I've invested a little bit more into decreasing my cooldown, but I'm still heavily relying on Outrider Executioner and Disruptive Firepower, even though these were nerfed quite a little bit, and maybe some weapon damage increase for the shotguns too, but otherwise this is pretty standard. Assassin's build, this is pretty standard right here. Now this brings us to the build, and the mod combinations are now drastically different. Previously I was doing the big mistake of trying to go with a more balanced build that deals both damage but also has some survivability, and previously I was praising a tier 2 mod called Mitigation from Death, which by the way I still believe is an amazing mod. It gives you up to like 90,000 armor just at my eye level of 46, so if you don't have other sources, this is a good one to have, but because I have a tier 1 mod that does that way better for one of my abilities, I completely removed this so that I don't run with both of them. So instead what I'm doing is I'm going with a time space protection that gives me that by default when I have the borrowed time activated, and it also gives me that 30% resistance, which means less anomaly damage and less status damage from enemies. And instead what I did is I focused a lot more on damage mods. To be more specific, the 3 major ones, or well, 4 major ones that I'm running with, 3 of which are on the gear, are as follows. So for the armors, I'm using the Bloodlust, I'm using the crit stack, and finally the steer into the barrel. Between all of these I'm getting about 40 to 50,000 additional firepower, which in my case would be about 50% more to my firepower. Each of them kinda do similar things. So Bloodlust on killing shots, it gives you firepower, stacks up to 3 times for every 10 seconds. There's also the crit stack, so if you do critical hits it stacks up to 5 times. It gives you both anomaly power but a lot of firepower as well, so it also lasts quite a little bit, and that was a huge increase when I added it on top of the previous one that was more defensive. And finally the steer into the barrel, tier 3, it's true, but it gives so much when you have a ton of enemies in close range, which you do 90% of the time. And then on the weapon I'm also using Killing Spree, that does an amazing thing. It increases your weapon damage by 25% for 20 seconds every kill, and it stacks up to 3 times, so you're getting 75% damage increase without any downside at all to it. To give you an example with another one, also tier 3, that kinda does something similar, that would be this one right here called Dark Sacrifice. It gives you the exact same bonus damage, but this time around it doesn't stack anymore. It's outright happening in combat, but at a big disadvantage that it drains up to 50% of your maximum health. It kinda happens every second, but this is the way better version of it. So depending which one of these you have, get the one or the other. They both give you the same effect, but of course, yeah, the first one I told you about is the way better version to get. So the moment I did all of this, everything changed already for the better. I was doing at least like 3 times the amount of damage that I was doing previously, and because I was killing things way much faster, it meant that I did not need to rely on damage mitigation. The best damage mitigation in any game is going to be the one in which the enemy doesn't even touch you. So that's exactly what you need to keep in mind when playing Outriders as well. This brings me to the weapon, and previously I was running with an automatic shotgun that was absolutely hot trash when I'm looking in hindsight, even though it was the best one that I had available. No matter how many runs I did, it was the best one because on top of the fact that it came with a very desirable mod combination with the bone shrapnel, great AoE and the perpetual mobile, everything else with the exception of maybe the crit damage sucked about it, but it was the best one that I had. And chances are that you're going to be in a similar situation where you have something that is great, helps you, but it's not all the way there to being best in slot. Until you look around some of the vendors, until I looked around in this case to the Bulwark, which is still not best in slot, but it helps tremendously because this helped me with a very awesome mod combination that made that infinite ammo stack up way better than the perpetual mobile. And this is the ultimate bleeding bullet that came with this weapon. Of course, it also comes with a really great stats, crit damage, close range damage. It also comes with the status powers, which means that it further buffs the bleed damage on this specific gun or other status effects that I might apply to targets, but I'm only applying the bleed. So why this was so helpful? It is because of another great mod that I was lucky enough to get on gear, and that is Vampiric Mag, which makes killing shots on enemies affected by bleed to replenish 50% of your ammo in your magazine. So compared to the perpetual mobile, this has a very big advantage. First of all, you don't need to wait up until 35% or less ammo to get that replenish in your magazine. You can have it at any point as long as an enemy is bleeding, which they will do every second with this gun. You're going to get that ammo back every single time at 90% ammo, at 10% ammo, at 50, it doesn't matter. The second major benefit is of course the bleed, which is another damage source on top, so it deals a dot, which helps you a little bit more with that. And of course, you don't need to go with this weapon, by the way. This was just the best one available for me, but I just wanted to show you that if you get a weapon with the ultimate bleeding bullet and you can extract that mod out of it, you can apply it on a different one and use the Vampiric Mag and bleed combination to get much better ammo back. It's not going to be applicable for all classes. I think Technomancers have way better sources, but I just wanted to let you guys know of this specific one. Now, on a final note, I know what your next question is, like how are you going to even afford this weapon, especially since as you level up in your challenge tiers, also the items at Tiago will level up as well, and they will cost even more drop pod resources. Well, first of all, I might suggest maybe buying these before, like for example, I level 46, otherwise you're going to see a jump up to 20,000 plus drop pod resources that you might not be able to afford. This is the first one. The second one, which took me a little bit of a while to even find out because for some reason the UI is extremely messed up, is that Tiago exchanges titanium to drop pod resources on a 1-to-1 ratio. For some reason he has it in the sell inventory, maybe for space reasons, because for some reason maybe they did not have space in the buy, but all of the vendors have these exchange resources in the buy, only Tiago has them in the sell window for some odd reason, so you might not even notice this until it's too late. So remember how previously I told you that you should collect every single drop you get from every single expedition that you do, even if it's like green or blue? Well, the reason for that, as I've said previously, is that you can sell that at Bailey or other vendors and get way more titanium in the process, and then exchange that titanium at Tiago. So the process is going to look like this. Let's say you just got like 10, 20 or 30 items, and if you look at the dismantle screen, if you hover over it, it's going to show you how much titanium that's going to give you. In this case, it's going to give me just a little bit over 140 titanium. But if I were to sell all of these items at any vendor, which they would sell for about 115 to 116,000, that sum of money would give me the possibility to buy 3 times the amount of titanium, or a little bit more than that, compared to purely salvaging these items. Yes, it's true you don't get the shards, but if you don't need them in the first place and you need the titanium more right now, this could be way better. So like for example, maybe you get 350 plus titanium, which if you convert it, you get over 700 of those drop pod resources, and that's just for like one small batch of items. By the way, you can sell and get thousands of those drop pod resources from the titanium that you exchange at Tiago, which in turn is going to give you access to a weapon such as this. And this is what you're going to have to do. If you look at my gear right now, it's not best in slot by a long margin. Like, most of my armor is completely hot trash. Even my 3 items right here are trash because at least one of these mods on them are completely unusable. So the process is going to be, you're going to look at the gear. If it has all of the 3 stats that you need for your build and class, absolutely use it, even if the mod on it sucks, because you can exchange one mod of the 2 on them on the one that is desired. And this, as I've said previously, is the balancing act that you have to do as you progress through the challenge tiers and have to make these sacrifices, but they are eventually going to be worth it. Piece by piece you will become better, as well as your build, as well as your class, and you're eventually going to reach those higher challenge tiers. So yeah, this is it. This is what I've been doing. It was extremely helpful to the point that I finally finished expeditions. It was extremely fun, finally, in the longest time, and it removed a lot of my frustration, at least until I'm starting to push 14 and 15 from that point on, but it should become much better since I will have access to way better items. This is it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.